Would like to bring to your attention this book by Amy Brann, Make Your Brain Work. This book offers useful information on how we can become more efficient, productive, and effective. She cites many studies, many observations, many reports by neuroscientists across decades on particular aspects of the brain, how we function best, how we can get the most out of our brain, some of the things that we should avoid, like not sleeping properly, for example, not getting enough exercise, not socializing, not ensuring that we get certain types of food in our diet. These things can diminish our cognitive capacity, our ability to think, our ability to problem solve. One really study I found quite interesting was the role of distractions, how people are so commonly distracted in the workplace and the amount of time this wastes. It's certainly my experience that one of the main reasons why people don't succeed in achieving their dreams and their big goals is, number one, they don't have big goals. This obviously is a big problem if someone doesn't have an overarching purpose, a big goal upon which all of the smaller goals and the nitty-gritty and the day-to-day things hang. So if you have one big goal, one big purpose, then everything else kind of takes care of itself, because then you can arrange the smaller goals to be in alignment with that bigger overarching sense of purpose and goal. That obviously is a big problem if someone doesn't have that. She does offer some tips on how we can hopefully develop a greater sense of what we should be doing with our time, what we should be investing in, what we enjoy, what we are good at. So she does look at this area, but this is not really a self-help book in the same sense that Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is. She has been influenced by that book. It does come across in her book. But the second biggest obstacle or hindrance, antagonistic factor, is simply the amount of time people waste on their smartphones, in small problems, in perceived problems, which aren't actually serious problems. People can get sidetracked and taken off course, and that, a lot of people spend an entire Saturday watching football, for example, and even just watching one game, 2 hours sat there on the sofa, playing video games, watching films. The amount of time people waste is quite incredible. And I think one of the main things that she is trying to encourage the listeners to do in her book is to focus on what matters, to focus on achieving the daily goals that you set yourself. She starts the book by talking about the importance of prioritization. So writing down all of the things that you need to get done today and ordering them in terms of importance. So this is a key priority, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. She says that multitasking is a myth, that it's fiction. The brain cannot successfully juggle many problems, work on many things at the same time. It's much better, and she looks at the prefrontal cortex and the role of the prefrontal cortex, the center of our frontal lobe at the front of our brains. That's where the high-performing cognitive part of our brain is. You can think of it almost like the CPU of a computer, and it can get tired very quickly. One of the things that tires it out is constantly changing from one task to another. She likens multitasking to an orchestra, which every 8 or so bars is changing piece. So imagine you've got an orchestra there, conductor is at the front, and every 16 bars they put, Lord of the Rings away, and they take out Star Wars, and they play 16 bars of Star Wars, they put that away, and then they take out Mission Impossible. And the amount of time that's wasted in having to adjust to a new piece of music, new key signature, new time signature, different moods, different tempo, is a very inefficient way to work. And so she says that, the most important thing is to just do each goal, take care of each goal, each task that you need to complete on a daily basis, one at a time, and try not to juggle too much, lots of different goals, because it will tire you out very quickly, and the quality of what you're able to produce, of how you get a task done, will be inferior if you're trying to do too much at the same time. So this is the kind of thing that she talks about in the book. I would like to just end the video by offering some tips myself on how you can possibly save time. She talks about stress and how we should do our best to avoid stress, because not only can it increase cortisol and adrenaline, and it can age us, make us ill, it suppresses the immune system. It is in and of itself an unpleasant experience when we're stressed all of the time. She gives a number of ways of reducing stress in our lives. One of the ways which I found quite useful is if you're in a noisy environment like the London Underground or public transport, on a bus for example, one good way to avoid the noise and the stress is to use something like this. You can buy these from B&Q's, quite cheap, £2.50. And actually, if you think about the amount of time you could be spending on your daily commute, let's say it takes you 1 hour to get to work, that's 2 hours every day where you're possibly sat there not really able to think clearly, just because of the level of noise on the train, the traffic, the police sirens whizzing around. It can actually prevent you from reading books like this, and to actually read things properly and deeply, and actually focus and think about the subject matter, think about problems in your own life that you're trying to solve. Sometimes it can be really useful just to have the sense of quiet and stillness, not to have too much noise, because then things will often just work themselves out, or a solution might appear. And so I've found this task particularly helpful when there's too much noise and you just want to think about something, maybe for an hour or so, without distractions. Another useful tip is to possibly get rid of the smartphone and just go with, an old school 2G phone that maybe doesn't have the internet. There are some disadvantages. I myself made that switch from smartphone to a much simpler phone, 2G, Nokia, very cheap phone. But you don't get all of the messaging, all of the noise, a lot of stuff that you don't really want to occupy your brain, stuff that's not useful, a lot of garbage. News tends to be very negative. That's causing us stress, affects our performance, because if we're not in a good frame of mind, if we're not in a positive mood, if we've got too much of other people suffering, even, when you see these horrible images on the news, it can really hinder your ability to think clearly and remain motivated and remain task orientated, and to take care of the little things that you need to get done. So I found that particularly useful. You do miss certain applications like SatNav, for example. That's a big disadvantage. Sometimes when you're driving, you want a map of the road, and that there are some disadvantages to using a simple phone without the internet. But the amount of time that one can save, and stress and noise, in my opinion, for me certainly, everyone's different, I'm more of an introvert, has been a net positive. The third piece of advice, really, or something to think about, would be to think about, for example, sometimes the best time to fill up the car with petrol is a Thursday night or a Friday night, simply because no one else really goes on Thursday or Friday. And this can save you a lot of time and stress. On Saturday, for example, everyone rushes down to the supermarkets. Most people get their shopping done on Saturday. And if you drive into the local Tesco or Sainsbury's or Asda or whatever it might be, you'll find so many cars, everyone's stressed, everyone's honking the horn, because they're trying to get into the one remaining parking space of, 500 cars. And everyone's running around with their trolleys and trying to get the last deal before they're all sold out. And everyone's different, so some people might like that experience, but for me, I really can't think of anything worse than being in that highest, and you're going to be in there for an hour, waiting at the checkout. For me, it's just a deeply unpleasant experience. So thinking about sort of contrarianism, and when's the best time, possibly the best time to do something is when no one else is actually doing that same particular thing. And I found filling up the car on a Friday night to be a particularly useful habit, because you just go there, it's a nice experience, you fill up the car, and it saves time. And because sometimes I've found the case, you go into a supermarket where everyone's highly stressed, and somebody said something to you, or you just hear really horrible, maybe you hear an argument between, you know, a man and a woman, and swearing and being nasty, and that kind of might stay in your mind for 3, 4, 5 hours. So preventing yourself from having, again, this negative input, leaving your brain free and spacious, so you're able to use your energy in a productive, meaningful way, where you're solving your particular problems, and maybe you can even, you know, because moments of genius, even highly creative moments, they're not going to occur in a highly stressful situation where you're not very happy. You know, one thing I love about this book is she talks about states of mind, more conducive to creativity and producing our best work. And so I recommend this book. You can go to Amazon, I'm sure, and check it out for yourself. I'm going to be doing some more book reviews in coming weeks on similar topics of the brain, and habits, and how we can, you know, improve our ability to get the most out of life, to be as happy as possible. We all want to be happy. So do stay tuned for that. And if you can, would really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button as well. It does help me out. Gives me a good indicator that people are watching, people are listening, people are finding it useful. And of course, I'll keep on producing hopefully better content in the future, book reviews, self-improvement knowledge, and hopefully it helps you out as well with the problems that you're facing, and hopefully you're able to take the knowledge and solve your particular problems, and hopefully move closer towards your own goals. Thanks for watching.